And as you all know, every month we have these webinars where we bring in industry experts to come ahead and provide experiential knowledge in the field of learning and development. So if you're watching this and you are very new to this, so this is Sandeep Kumar, founder of LXD Guild community, and along with the co-founder Krishna. So this has been a community which we have been working on to get all the learning and development professionals onto one place or under one umbrella. And we are very happy to announce that we have crossed 5,000 members as part of our LXD Guild LinkedIn channel. So thank you very much for continued response from each of you. And today, I would like to welcome our guest, uh, Harry Francis. So, a quick introduction about him. He is a very good friend of mine and even to my family. And it was really great meeting him, though it was short, but we really got a chance to very much discuss on what is instructional design as a field and what was and what is and what is going to be. So, just to give a quick intro on Harry Francis. So, he is a graduate in MA English Literature, and he's got MPhil from EFLU, which is formerly called CFL. And coming to his work experience, so currently he is working with Gainsight as Director for Customer Operations. And it's been 8 years that he has been associated with this organization. And previously, he has been associated with Pramati Technologies, OpenText, and Globe Arena. And yes, so it's time to welcome Harry Francis to join us.
Thank you, Sandeep. Thank you. It's a pleasure working with you, and it's a pleasure to meet people here to talk about the educational psychology and instructional design. And thank you, LXD Guild, for giving me this opportunity to come and share whatever I have gleaned over the years about instructional design and about educational psychology. Thank you, Sandeep. Thank you, Shipra, and thank you, Krishna, the team over here. So let's quickly get on to what it is about. So let me start. Talking about what is this all about. So I think everybody can see my screen, right?
Uh,
Yeah.
I think you need to just share the screen. As of
Okay.
now, we are able to see
Okay.
only both of us.
It's shared.
It's already being shared.
Yeah.
Okay, then yeah, now we can see it.
Yeah. Right.
Yes.
So today's topic is about educational psychology and instructional design. So I'm going to talk about a little bit about the background of instructional design and a little bit about educational psychology. Over the years, what people have, like the psychologists have talked in the stream of learning, training, and all that. We will spend some time to understand the background of it. Before that, very quickly, let me introduce myself. Thank you, Sandeep, for introducing me. So I've done MA English Literature, postgraduate diploma in teaching English, and MPhil in English language teaching from EFLU. This is years ago. And then now it is called as EFLU. Earlier it was called as Central Institute of English and Foreign Languages. So right now I'm working in Gainsight as a director customer operations. Before this, I worked in three companies, Pramati, OpenText, and Globarina, as these many years. So over 22 years of experience in this field. I have donned many hats in the IT industry. So now I am taking care of the customer operations for this company. So I'm married and I have two kids, Joshua and Esther. So over there, this is my picture. So jumping into the why this webinar. So here we are talking about two main points. One is to get an overview of the background to various educational theories. We will talk about that for some 20 minutes or so. And then we will get an understanding of what instructional design is and its principles, the background. The reason why I'm sharing this is, I go to many campuses during the campus interviews from the office. And I talk to many people, right? And also I give many guest lectures in colleges, especially engineering colleges and degree colleges. So whenever I go to these campuses, I find youngsters, they are learning more about Java, or they want to learn machine language. They want to learn so many new things. It's good to learn about that. So, but soon once they complete the engineering or any graduation degree, when they come to the work field, 6 months down the line, they work into that and they don't find much interest, and they move over to either curricular development, course development, or they call themselves as content writers. They move into technical writing or instructional designers. So the names are different, but the kind of work what they do is a kind of same kind of work. But like as they do it, I want to encourage everybody who are in that field and who are also planning to take that field to understand what is the background for what you are doing. So this webinar, which is going to be for next 50 minutes, will talk about the background. And also, LXD is also having a course which talks about in detail about these background theories. You can get enrolled in that course and learn more about it. But this is just a spark which will enable you to understand what it is. So the caveat is it is just a short version. This has been my experience and gleaned over the years. So I'm going to share only at a shorter version. There's a lot of Google is there. There's Chat GPT. You can get into that and learn more on your own based on your interest. So let's get into the subject. The first one, I would like to introduce the two terms called pedagogy and andragogy. So what are these terms? So don't, it's like Greek and Latin to many people, but don't wonder.
Yes.
So pedagogy is all about teaching children. Andragogy is all about teaching adults. So these are some
Yes.
words. Yeah.
So, Harry, just I wanted to tell the audience or the listeners. So, if you have any questions or any queries or something just comes to your mind, right? So, please feel free to leave it in the LinkedIn comments so that I can take it to Harry and we can address them as we go ahead with this webinar. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Sandeep. So pedagogy is about all about the teaching children, where the teacher or the person who is actually delivering the lecture assumes the responsibility of learning, and there are these stages where they learn, understand, manipulate, retain, and use. But whereas in andragogy, where the adults assume the responsibility of learning. So let's leave. So till from your first class onwards till your K-12 or 12th class, the pedagogy principles apply. But the moment you jump into graduation and all, the andragogy principles apply. So let me get into the adult learning. Andragogy is nothing but adult learning. So there are these principles. So let me introduce to the one of the psychologists called Malcolm Knowles. So this guy actually has done a lot of research and has come up with 6 adult learning principles. He says adults are internally motivated and self-directed. So here, as against pedagogy, right? So when in pedagogy, when you're teaching children, you push information, whereas adults want to learn more information and they are self-directed and they are internally motivated. So be it working professionals or be it anybody who wants to learn any skill or any learning. So adults want are internally motivated. So there is intrinsic motivation for them, and then they also bring life experiences and knowledge to the learning experience. So we don't start from the scratch, but we actually build in on the life experiences. They are also goal oriented, they're relevancy oriented, they are practical, and they need to be respected. So the andragogy, what we are talking about is when you're writing a course or when you're actually doing a virtual instructor led training or when you're actually writing any development, any material, you have to keep all these principles in mind that you are addressing an adult and not a child. So this difference is there. So one primary thing is we are into andragogy and not into pedagogy. That means we are teaching adults, their learning principles are different than the children. That's the first point to keep in mind. So all the instructional design out there and then curriculum developers, content developers know that the audience whom you're addressing are adults, and there is a background. So you can go into Google and type for Malcolm Knowles, and then you will know more about what this person has said, and there's a lot of research behind this. So that being said, let's move to the next topic about the learning theories. So if you look at the 100 years ago, like starting from 1900 to 1950s, 80s, and to 2000s, there are these 4 basic main theories. We'll talk about behaviorism, cognitivism, constructivism, and connectivism. So this again are new terms for you, or maybe some of you must have known this. You must have heard this in multiple places. But I want to give a background to this into what is behaviorism, what is cognitivism, constructivism, and connectivism. Who are the people involved, and what do we understand, and how does it help our instructional design, or how does it help in curriculum development or not? So let's get into the first thing called behaviorism. This emerged in the early 1900s. There's this guy called Pavlov. So he's again a psychologist. So he brings this term called classical conditioning, where initially he brings a dog and then he gives some food to the dog. So whenever the dog sees the food, it starts salivating. So this is the relation. And then he rings the bell. Whenever he rings the bell, there's no response from the dog. So there are these two different activities. One, it's an unconditional stimulus and unconditional response, a neutral stimulus and no response. So these are the words which are high-fi words, but don't bother about the words. The concept is simple, that when the food is given, the dog salivates. When the bell rings, the dog doesn't. But when during conditioning, what happens is whenever Pavlov brought food and associates it with the bell, the dog starts salivating. So after a period of time, when you just ring the bell itself, the dog starts salivating. So from this experiment, Pavlov says that it is a classical conditioning, that a learning happens and you associate learning with certain behavioral change. So the word behaviorism means whenever you learn something, there's a change in the behavior. The right behavior should be reinforced, the wrong behavior should be punished. So let me get into the what of it. So if you talk about behaviorism in education, it is a process of reinforcements and punishment. According to the behaviorism, learning is a change in observable behavior. So if you look at our childhood books, like if you look at some of the grammar books even today, like for example, if you take the old book Renan Martin Grammar, or if you take any of the English language teaching books, or if you take any old school books, we see a lot of rote learning. Rote learning is nothing but a routine kind of thing which people are, some of the concepts are drilled into, and they want people to learn that and say, this is rote learning, you have to learn this way. And your learning is reinforced and wrong learning is punished. So some schools still follow the behavioral methodology, till some classes still follow the behavioral methodology, but understand this is a change in the observable behavior is called behaviorism. That's point number one. Next, as the time went by, somewhere around 1950s, 60s, cognitivism. This is a theory which came in. It rose above behaviorism. It said, okay, change in behavior. But what happens in the mind of a learner, or what happens in the mind when one person is learning? So, cognitivism is all about the cognitive domain. One is, does he really understand? Does the person understand the meaning? Can that person explain, compare? Or how can he apply the knowledge? How can he solve problems? Or what is the analysis part of it? What is the synthesis, evaluation? All these things goes into the brain. In behaviorism, the brain is a black box. You don't know what happens inside. How does the person learn? What are the stimuli for learning? They don't know. But whereas when you come to cognitivism, all these things understand, and importance is given to your brain and how you learn. So what is it? So there is a psychologist called Piaget. So he's a Swiss psychologist. He started off this cognitive learning theory. So this favored the learning center approach. So he said the primary goal of instruction is not to change behavior, but to acquire knowledge. So when we said acquire knowledge, there he brings a new term called schema. Schema is nothing but a background knowledge. So he says every person has some background knowledge, not necessarily in the subject that you are teaching, but in the world, every person comes with certain background knowledge, and your training or your learning should start utilizing that background knowledge and build upon that. That is what this Piaget says talk about. And then he says this is the cognitivism theory, where you build upon the existing knowledge and then you give a lot of the brain power to use that. So that is about cognitivism. So let's go to the third one, constructivist theories, constructivism. So as I said, behaviorism is nothing but a change in the behavior. When you learn something, your behavior changes. In order to learn well, if you learn well, you have to give positive response. If you do not learn well, there's a negative response. Second comes cognitivism. It's all in the brain. You use the existing knowledge and then you actually learn. Third one is constructivism. Constructivism is nothing but in somewhere in the 1980s and 1990s, early 1990s, some psychologists came and said, like just not only the brain, but you should be able to construct, learn, and build on your own. So cognitive constructivism, Piaget talks about schema. Schema is nothing but the background knowledge. You get some knowledge, you accommodate knowledge in the brain, and then your learning expands. He talks about that. But here we see Vygotsky, who talks about social interaction, how people connect with people, and then learn through exchange of words. Like for example, the other day I was talking to Sandeep and Krishna, and we three of us were discussing, and we learned a lot of things just by discussing. So this is constructivism, where we are actually exchanging knowledge and then we are learning. So this is the theory of constructivism. So what is it? It is about that learners create knowledge and understanding of the world through external activities such as exploration, experiences, and interaction. So this is constructivism. And finally, we'll get into the fourth part, is called the connectivism. Now, connectivism is nothing but today, after 2000, with the advent of internet and new technology, information is everywhere. Now, how do you actually get that information and utilize it for your betterment? How do you learn? How do you connect the dots? There's so much information. Today, if you just go to any browser and type about any question, you get multiple opinions. You have so much of information. How do you connect them? How do you actually learn them? So that is all about connectivism. Here you saw there is previous knowledge and this previous understanding and previous information. You have this whole set of your existing knowledge, and then you have current experience. How do you bring all together, connect it, and get into the next stage? This is about connectivism. So here what they say is learning is a process of connecting information sources. So nurturing and maintaining connections is needed to facilitate continual learning. If you look into the all the four theories now, so we talked about these four theories, right? So behaviorism, cognitivism, constructivism, and connectivism. So these might be new terms, but just look into any browser or search Google, and then you will know about what these are, and you will learn more about it. So let me talk about behaviorism. In behaviorism, the learner is passive. They learn via external processes, and there is a positive reinforcement. The methods could be lecture, drill, practice, multiple choice tests, all this. So this whole quadrant comes under behaviorism. Then when it comes to cognitivism, that is 1950s onwards. So learning goes beyond external. It is an internal process. So they talk about short-term memory and long-term memory. Here again, we talk about lecture, visual tools, mind maps, multiple choice, essay assessment, and all that. Then we come to constructivism. This is another quadrant where we talk about the learner builds on personal experience and constructs knowledge on their own. Here, there's a lot of discovery, collaborative group work, self guided learning, and peer grading and review. Finally, we come to the connectivism point where we talk about the learner self directed and connects with people with information and learns a lot, creates knowledge collaboratively. So, these are the four learning theories. Any
Yes,
questions till
thank
now?
you. Yeah, thank you, Francis, for sorry, thank you, Harry, for
Mm.
taking us through this. And I think, yeah, so if you're looking at how or how this webinar itself is aligning to one of these methods, right?
Yeah.
So maybe you can. I see that there's an overlap between constructivism and connectivism because,
Yes.
yeah, here we go ahead and the first thing is like you have personal interest that you need to
Mm.
hop into this. I know it's a
Yeah.
busy evening or busy
Mm.
morning for many, but yeah, that is a little bit of what do you say, an interest, yes, that you hop onto this, and then it is a connected learning, right? So it is
Yeah.
like we all share this knowledge so that you can grow in whatever you have as an understanding about it, right? So I
Yeah.
think, yeah, this is great. Yes. So I'm looking at, yeah, there are no comments, so I think we are good to go.
Yeah, thank you,
Yes.
Sandeep. Thank you, Sandeep. So again, as a like this is just an introduction, right? So this has a lot of theory behind. So I encourage every instructional designer or content writer or curriculum developer or in fact technical writers or whoever wants to come into the learning, training, writing fields, right? Look into these theories, understand what is the background, and then have a fair understanding of what it is. Then you will know the learner needs, because when you do the learner analysis or training needs analysis, all these theories build into it. Now let's move into
Sure.
the learning styles. This is another point. So first we talked about pedagogy and andragogy, that is adult learning principles, where we talked about what we are in the training business or ID business, writing, wherever we are dealing with adults. The second, we talked about different learning theories. We talked only about the four learning theories. Now we'll talk about the learning styles. Each and every learner, their learning style is different. Suppose if you see some of them, some learners, they actually look at the visuals, graphs, flashcards, and they want to learn visually. So they see and they understand. They don't want to read, they don't want to hear, they want to see, and then they once they see it, they grasp it, and they are that kind of learners. And there are auditory learners where they just listen to something, one lecture, they listen to one lecture one night, they listen to a lecture, and tomorrow morning they have that knowledge and they acquire that knowledge and they produce that knowledge. Similarly, music lecture and all, these are auditory learners. Then there are this physical learners, kinetics. So they want to do hands-on experiments, they want to have movement, they want to explore, they want to do a lot of experiments and learn. This is a physical, and then there's a verbal learner who actually writes, presents, and then teaches others, and then as he speaks, they learn. So different kinds of learning styles, right? There's a logical learning style where you learn through patterns, through statistics, and there's a social learning through collaboration, talking to people and understanding each other. So while we were doing our MA English, I remember we had around lots of novels to read, and then we didn't have the resources. Our library didn't have many books those days, so we used to actually gather and say, you read this particular book and I will read another book, and then we used to have gather as teams, and then we used to discuss in groups and learn from each other. So that's a social learning. And finally, there is a solitary learner, so who wants to be independent as an individual, they will sit, they will learn. So different types of learners, all these kinds of learners need different types of presentation. So, for example, as an instructional designer, or as a writer, or as a trainer, if you are actually looking at your learners, understand what kind of, or what is the persona of the learner. Are they visual learners, or you want to add both auditory and visual effects, or what do you want to say social? Give them some activities and exercises where they can learn. So, understand the learning styles, understand the learning strategies of each and every person, whereby when you do this, you will ensure that your training or teaching is effective and people understand it really well. So this is the learning style. You can read more when you actually you want to see where you stand. Also, you can check whether you are a visual learner or a verbal learner or a social learner. You can check yourself what style of learning is yours. And
Yeah.
if you look at your, yeah.
Do we have some assessments where we can get to understand what learning style
Yeah,
a
definitely,
person got?
definitely. Yeah,
Yeah. Okay,
yeah.
great. So just sorry, we missed on one question. So
Mhm,
while you were taking us through the cognitivism and the other
mhm.
methods, right? So
Methods, yeah.
yeah, so we had a question from Syra. Sorry, we missed
Mhm.
it. So the question is, can behaviorism be incorporated while designing learning solutions for adults?
Again, this depends on the kind of work, in the sense, like, for example, if the requirement is like for a person to do a rote kind of job. And let me give you an example. Like, there are this training sessions for people who are in the manufacturing industry, where the manufacturing units, they require certain people to work in a certain way, and they have to be very precise in the kind of work what they are doing. So when your training materials is involved, and when you are into the training there, and when you are actually doing there you encourage rote learning. There you encourage a lot of drill and practice. There you encourage the where the behavior is appreciated, and there's no negative marking as such, but a lot of reinforcement happens in the area where there's a lot of kind of repetitive work. But when it comes to any cognitive work, anything which you have to do with uh, anything which you have to do with your brain or cognitive work, there you cannot use behaviorism. I hope I clarified your question.
Yes, I
Hello?
think, yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. So
Yeah.
yes, that seems good. Yes, yeah, we can go ahead. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Sandeep, and thank you for asking that question, Kara. So again, there is no hard and fast rule that you have to use only this, or you have to be only using this particular theory. These are, over the years, people have come up and did a lot of research in the educational background, and they have given us this knowledge. Now it's up to us, how do we actually mix and match for the kind of learners. When we do a training needs analysis, and in that particular thing, when we come to know about the learners, and when we know about the learner style, for example. So today, if you look at a lot of right now, if you look at some of the instructional design modules, or when a lot of gamification is added, where people want to be interactive and people want to learn by actually doing a lot of things. And like this generation post COVID, they are morely visually oriented, because at that particular point of time when there were no sessions in the colleges or classrooms, or people were working from home, a lot of learning happened through visual and YouTube and all these things. So audiovisual became a very important role. People started learning that, and now the whole generation is hooked to visual learning. So
Yeah, I
going
can
ahead,
very much, I can very much relate, Harry, because yeah,
yeah,
so my kid already starts picking up some accent which even we don't speak, and
yeah,
we get to see that okay,
yeah,
when we figure it out, so it's more like from the YouTube, whatever
yeah,
the animation series which are going on, right? So
true,
I
yeah,
think yeah, that definitely has changed,
yeah,
especially COVID when everybody's locked down and there's no other way to escape. But yeah, they
yeah,
had to get into that, and I think as per that even the schools or the education system is evolving
yeah.
slowly towards that, and that's where you can see a lot of edtech companies coming into this business or into this industry, right?
Yeah, yeah, Sandeep. A lot of edtech companies and also a lot of interactive learning is happening, where a lot of gamification elements are being introduced. And with AI coming in now, a lot of changes are going to happen in the way this whole the instructional design, writing, and all is going to emerge. So it will be more interactive. It will be more, like connectivism will be established more, and people will move into that angle where there'll be a lot of social learning happening there. So again,
That's good.
yeah, so thank you, Sandeep. And so this is a point where we actually have that background in our mind, saying that, why is it that person, this has worked well, this particular course has worked well with that unit of people, but it is not really working with this kind of learners. So it is again the learning styles, the learning behavior. We have to go back and check, do a proper training needs analysis, and then when we are developing our courses, add some elements where our learners are interested to learn more. So all these theories will help there. So thank you. We'll get into the next element now. So I talked about three elements. One is about adult learning principles and andragogy. Talked about the four learning theories about behaviorism, cognitivism, connectivism, and constructivism. Also talked about learning styles. Now let me go into the history of instructional design. So if you look at this infographic here, you see we have come a long way from Dale, Skinner, Bloom, Gagne, and Dick and Carey, and Addy, and Sweller, and all of these things, right? So in 1946, in the year, this guy, the psychologist Edgar Dale, just started off a code of learning model, and he said that humans can remember or what they can process, what they can achieve. So he started off with this model, and then as cognitivism took over, there's a psychologist called Skinner who said, enough of behaviorism, let's move into cognitivism. And Skinner is called the father of cognitivism. He's written multiple books there. He said that when learning happens, it should be small frames of instruction, self-pacing, and you should actually have immediate feedback, and then understand that, and then like build upon what you have learned. Then comes Benjamin Bloom. We all know Bloom's taxonomy. I will talk about it in this today only. I'll talk about it and give a little bit information about what Bloom's taxonomy. It is about a development from where we talk about behaviorism, rote learning activities, to higher level processing, and how to embed it in the long term memory. So, as humans, we have short term, long term memory, right? When we learn something, it goes and sits to the short term memory. Only when we reinforce and revise, it goes on to the long term memory. So, Benjamin Bloom has come up with the Bloom's taxonomy, taking people saying that whatever is in the short term memory can be moved to long term memory. You have to follow these principles. So all these principles, all these psychologists, educational psychologists, have done a lot of research and have spent a lot of time in doing this. So we will spend some time in learning about some theories. So we also have Gaine, who actually came up with 9 events of instructions in the year 1960. He said, like, we need to understand, for a student, we have to gain attention, inform them about the objectives, what is the end objective, how do you recall prior learning, how do you provide learner guidance, how do you provide feedback, how do you assess, and all that. There are 9 events. So Gaine has actually come up with that. And then we slowly move on to Dick and Carey. These two people, they actually came up with a 9 step iterative cycle. We will learn about this. And we talk about student step by step from goal formulation to summative evaluation, how actually this model helps. So from Dick and Carey model, ADDIE model is developed. So ADDIE model, all of them know it's analysis, design, develop, implement, and evaluate. So today, 90% of all the instructional design companies or edtech companies or instructional designers, curriculum developers use this ADDIE model. So which stands for analysis, design, development, implementation, and evaluation. So this is somewhere in the 1970s. Then going on to the 1990s, there's this cognitive load theory by Sweller, who has come up with the principles of constructivism, that the classes should be in such a way that the learners should manage their own learning and create their own meaning from their experiences. So, like if you look at an example, classic example of Udemy, or you get into any of the edtech companies. So, I'll take an example of Udemy for that matter. If you get into Udemy, right, you have learning paths for every student. As you enroll and then you actually get into these courses, you can create a learning path for your own, and you want to create your own learning. You can take one piece from one particular course, another piece from other course, join them together and create another course by yourself, and then you can create your own path. That's Sweller talks about cognitive load theory. And finally, we have constructivism from 1990s, where we talk about in a way that students guide their own learning and get own learning from their experiences. So this is the history of instructional design. If you get into a little bit of each of these things, so let's talk about the Merrill's principle of instruction. I will talk about a few uh, people here. Let me talk about Merrill, and then I'll talk about Gaine, I'll talk about Bloom, and I'll talk about evaluation also. So let me start with the Merrill's principles of instruction. So Merrill established 5. This is another psychologist. So we are talking about educational psychologists who have come up and then who have shared their knowledge. So Merrill talks about 5 instructional design principles that can be applied when you're designing any program. So he says these are the 5 things. First thing, it should be every learner should be engaged in solving real world problems. So if you are not giving them any use cases, if you are not giving them any points where they are not solving any problems, learning doesn't happen. So always see that, like there is a use case and there is a problem solving approach there. And he talks about the second principle. He talks about, he says your existing knowledge should be activated as a foundation for new knowledge. It says that there is a schema, your background knowledge, you have learned something in the past, and then you have to establish on that knowledge. So your existing knowledge should be activated. So the activation principle. Then the third one is new knowledge is demonstrated. So when before giving that new knowledge, you have to show this is how it is done, and the new knowledge demonstrated. So demonstrating is show me kind of a thing. So in e-learning, if you see, there are a lot of guided practices. So companies like Pendo, companies are actually, when you are actually doing into a product, when they're developing a product, they are giving just in time learning. So when you actually are stuck with any particular piece, when you want to learn a little bit more, so you can actually click that button, and then that will help you for that small piece how actually you can learn or work with that feature. So here guided practices are there. In instructional design, guided practices, Merrill talks about demonstration, but we are talking it about guided practice. Then finally, the fourth stage is application. The new knowledge is applied by the learner. So let me do it, application. And finally, new knowledge is integrated into the learner's work. So Merrill says these are the 5 principles. And instruction design, when you are doing any course or when you are writing any, developing any curriculum, identify these, have some use cases, identify the problems, and give them the real world issues, and then activate the existing knowledge, and then show them how it is done, give them demos, give them guided practices, and give them a sandbox environment where they can actually do something. If it's a product learning company, give them sandboxes where they can actually come and learn. And finally, the new knowledge is integrated. They can actually learn in the production environment. In our own company, when learning happens, right, we have a lot of visual instructor-led training programs where they give a lot of use cases about what is happening, and then the existing knowledge of what they have learned about customer success, it's activated, and then a lot of demos are there, webinars are there, and then we also have a sandbox. We give the org environment to everybody, so whoever is interested, they can come and learn, and then finally that knowledge is integrated in them, and they can start working on their own. So this is Merrill. When you're doing, when you're writing any module, understand a little bit more, get into Google, type about Merrill's instructions, principles of instructions. uh, Here we can spend a lot of time on this, but we will spend an hour only talking about this. But I would require you to go and do some self learning. I think again it's constructivism, where we actually say, like there's a lot of things out there you can go and learn. Yeah.
Yes, yes, and definitely LXD Guild itself is a place where you come across such. We have posts which go
Mhm.
on various topics. So I
Yeah.
think yeah, so our audience can just refer to our platform or our LinkedIn so to get all this knowledge. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Sandeep. So next one is again Gaines's 9 principles of instruction. So this is, so as I said, I'll recap very quickly, right? Once we started about andragogy, the adult learning principles. We also talked about the learning behaviorism, cognitivism, the learning theories. We talked about the learner styles. We talked about the history of instructional design. Now we are talking a little bit about certain principles, certain psychologists who they have said, right? So we talked about Merrill. We also are talking about Gainey. So he has come up with 9 principles of instructions. So how does the learner, learn? It's like first is you gain attention. Once you get the attention, you inform learner of the objectives, that is the expectancy, and you stimulate recall prior learning. Then you present a stimulus, provide certain guidance, and elicit the performance. Based on the performance, you give feedback, you assess the performance, and you enhance the retention and transfer. So it's almost like what Merrill has said in his 5 principles. Gaine has come up with 9 principles and said, every time when you are writing a module or you're creating a course or you're creating a curriculum, gain attention. Gain attention of the learner. And in this world, when the attention spans are becoming very low, it is very important to get the attention of the learner and say, okay, this is what we are going to do now, and then inform them about what you are going to learn. So once the attention is taken, and then you actually inform them, soon after this lesson you will be learning about A, B, C, D, E, the objectives, because they are adults, right? If the objectives match their need, they will sit through the entire session and they will learn it. And if they don't, they just leave away. So gain attention, inform learner about the objectives. Once that is set, your stage is all ready, and then now you can stimulate the prior learning. So you can ask questions, interact with them, and find out what is their prior learning. Here, when you are writing a course, you call them as prerequisites. You say these are the prerequisites. For example, if you have to learn our product, you have to know MySQL, you need to know Java, you need to know C, and you need to know programming language basics. So we assume that these people know that, and then you start learning based on the prerequisites. That's your prior learning. Then you present stimulus and provide learning guidance. Here you give the proper training happens here, or proper module lesson happens here, where you actually give a lot of information and you give learning guidance, and here learning happens. Once this has happened, then you say, okay, now that you have learned, why don't you do something? Here we give them a use case and ask them to come up with a solution. You elicit performance. And here the response happens from the learner, where they actually give back to you what they have learned. So generally what happens, we also talk about listening, right? Active listening involves when you learn something, when you listen to something, towards the end of the meeting, you paraphrase and say, is this what you have said? So that is, you're giving feedback to them, and then you understand. That's a listening process. Similarly, in learning, when a person has learned, you elicit performance from them, and when they do that performance, you give them feedback. You say, yes, very good, you have done really good, and that's a great point of it, and that reinforcement happens. And then you assess the performance and enhance the retention and transfer. So this is Gaines's principles. So you can use that directly into your learning modules. When you're creating your modules, you can use these principles. So this is Gaine, built on Merrill.
Yes. Yes, and I think yeah, Gagne's 9 principles, yeah, definitely are very widely used in current e-learning design and development. Yeah. So thank you for bringing that to us, Harry.
Yeah, thank you, Sandeep. So moving on to Bloom's taxonomy. So Benjamin Bloom, he says, like learning doesn't happen, need to be behavioral change alone. You can actually bring learning and take it to a next level. So he says the first one is remember, understand, apply, analyze, evaluate, and create. So when you learn something, you remember it, that is, you recall facts and basic concepts, and then you understand what it is all about, where you'll be able to explain ideas or concepts. After you understand a particular piece, then you apply it, use information in the new situation. Application happens. Once you apply, then you also analyze. You draw connections among the ideas, and then you say, okay, after analysis happens, you evaluate, and you again start a new thing. So you create. So these are the Bloom's taxonomy 6 levels. So when you are writing objectives at each stage, these are some of the verbs which you are given here. For example, at the remember stage, you say define or list or memorize or repeat state. Or understand, you say classify, describe, or discuss. At the apply stage, you say execute, implement. These are some of the verbs which you can use while you are writing objectives for your instructional design module or for curriculum development when you're doing. As we said here, right, define the objectives. We said inform learner of the objectives. So when the objectives are written, you have to understand these are the verbs we use and these are the terminology we use when you are writing objectives. And this is Bloom's taxonomy, taking you from remember stage to the create stage. So you have get a lot of material in Google. So go and do some exploration and learn about Bloom's taxonomy. So very quickly we'll move on to Bloom ADDIE model, which is a famous model, as I've said. If you go back to the history of instructional design, when we talk about it, so we said Skinner, Bloom, and Gainey model, and Dick and Carey model, and the ADDIE model is a version on Dick and Carey, so it's a improved version of that. So here, if you see ADDIE model, A stands for analysis, D stands for design, another D stands for develop, I stands for implement, and E stands for evaluate. So every instructional designer these days, or trainer, or curriculum developer, or content writer uses ADDIE model. So what happens in the analysis stage? So there is this needs analysis, requirement analysis. You have content, context analysis. A lot of analysis happen. You get a lot of data, and then based on the data, so whatever the data you get through the analysis, it can be through surveys, it can be to TNA, it can be to anything. For example, if you say in our own company, I'll give an example of a real-time example. There is a team and who require a specific training program. So the manager comes and says, our team requires a training program in communication skills. So if they say communication skills is a very broad area, what can be taught in communication skills? So as we do this analysis part, we get into the learners mode, and then we say which area of communication are you poor, or what is it that you carry. So we do some analysis part of it, and we see, okay, this is the area. They say they lack presentation skills, and they are not confident enough while doing some presentations. So we it's on to the presentation skills. Communication is a broad area. We actually come based on the analysis, we come to a conclusion that these learners need presentation skills, and they needed end-to-end presentation skills, and they are also a little bit scared to go and face an audience. So soft skills like how to face an audience should also be required. So this is the need analysis, and you do the analysis, and also you also do the content analysis. You have created some content, existing content is there. So when you're actually looking, okay, this is the need for this, what is the content which you need, what is the learner's age group, what is the learner's background, are they 10 years experience into the industry, or are they freshers, are they 20 years into the industry? Do the learners analysis. Based on that, you do the content analysis, implement all the principles there, and then come up with a certain design where you actually write your learning objectives, your delivery format, your activities, your exercises. All these things happens here. Your storyboarding comes in here at the design level. You actually sit with the designers and also actually come up with certain ideas. Visual elements also get added here. Then comes the development stage where you create a prototype, develop the course materials, review, pilot session, and all. The development stage, you use tools like Camtasia, uh, Articulate, and there are many tools these days now. You use these tools and develop the course. When it comes to I, the implement stage where you actually start implementing, you can use your learning management systems like Skilljar or any learning management system, and then whatever you have developed will go into the uh, LMS, and then you can do a lot of uh, uh, course study there, and people come enroll themselves and they learn. And finally, it's the evaluate stage where you evaluate, and then there are two types of evaluation. Again, we will come into that a little bit into the stream. We'll talk about evaluation also. So this is the ADDIE model. So if you go to Google and search for ADDIE, you have multiple people writing about ADDIE, and because it's very famous, people are using this in many fields. It looks very
Yes.
simple, but it is very essential. Yeah, Sandeep, you're saying something.
Yes, yes, yeah, yeah. That's one of the most followed models,
Yeah.
definitely. And even when most of the interviews, the first thing is like, okay, hey, do
Mm.
you know some methodologies? And then immediately it is
Yeah.
ADDIE, right? So I had
Yeah.
one question. So I
Mm.
don't see any much questions, but yeah, so
Mm.
this is from me. So when we are going ahead and doing the TNA, right, the
Mm.
training needs analysis.
Yes, yes,
So
yeah.
so, is it mandatory that we need to continue with the rest of the steps in ADDIE, or is it a decision which we can take at the first step that we don't have to continue with a course development, but rather the need is for some, it might be a different thing, maybe an in-person or a classroom training, rather than
Yeah.
just going and creating a e-learning.
Yeah. So when we do the TNA, right, Sandeep, thank you for the question. So when you do the TNA, there it actually gives us a lot of clarity for people. Do they need to develop course, or should it be a training module, or should it be in-person training, or are there any existing available materials already, existing courses which people can go? All these decisions come at the analysis stage. So when we do a proper analysis, sometimes the need can be actually a 30 minutes training program in a classroom session, or where in a training room, that should be there, and need not do the design, develop, implement, evaluate part. We need not have it. So we can do the analysis, do the training, and directly jump to evaluate part of it. But sometimes after the needs analysis are done, you don't get enough material, and you actually have that knowledge only within that domain, and only limited people have. Then you need to follow all these. For example, I'll give an
Yes.
example. In our own company, Gainsight, right? It's a customer success management domain. So 10 years ago, CSM domain was not there, but now CSM has picked up a lot. And then the Gainsight product knowledge is only within the people who work in Gainsight. So if people want to know about and want to become Gainsight admins, so there is no information available outside. So when we actually do the analysis and we ask them what is it that they want, when we get the information, when we elicit the response, we say, okay, this is what they need. We have, suppose we have, say, 25 features in a product. Then we say, okay, we need this group does not need all the 25 features. All they need is 5 features in that particular product where they can actually start working. So we take that 5 features, we design, develop, implement, and then we say, okay, these are the features. Here we have developed an on-demand course for you. You take it, and then you can do it, and then we evaluate, and then the feedback continues. So it's like that. I
Yes,
hope I clarified
thank
the
you.
question.
Yes, yes, thank you, Harry. And I really like the depiction through this image, because usually Addy appears to be like the end. The end is evaluation, but right.
Yeah.
But yeah, what you're depicting here or showing in the screen is something where it's a cycle, right? So it's
Yeah.
stages, which again, once you're done with evaluation, so again you evaluate to analyze. Okay,
Yeah.
so is there any gap in the learning, and then again you start the process, right?
Yeah.
Yes. Thank you.
Many a times we miss many points while we are doing this, because nobody is perfect, right? So we lose a lot of pieces here and there between the cracks. So while the evaluation happens, formative, summative, both evaluation happens, the feedback is again fed into the analysis part. So when you're doing new analysis, the feedback is also taken care of, and you improve the
Yes.
course, and the next session will be much more better. So it's like
True,
that, Sandeep.
true.
Yeah.
Yeah, each
Thank you,
step is
Sandeep.
not, yeah, though it is just like, okay, a topic or maybe like a
Hmm.
step in the process, but each step itself again brings in several methodologies or
Yeah.
several implementation methods where people can explore. So it's not very definitive, but yeah,
Hmm.
it is very subjective to what is the requirement, and then uh, uh, whoever is designing or the learning
Yeah.
professions can pick it up, right? Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Sandeep. And with the AI coming in, lot of AI tools are actually coming into this. So, for example, while doing analysis, there are a lot of AI tools. While doing design, there are these AI tools. While evaluating AI tools, so AI, artificial intelligence, has actually stormed the market like anything within this just a year. So now there's a lot of possibilities at each stage. Using AI, you can get into the development of course material and all that. So, oh, I have
Yes,
only
yes,
10
that's
more
true.
minutes to. Yeah,
Yeah,
very good.
sorry. Yeah, you can go
Yeah,
ahead.
sorry. Yeah, so the other one is about the successful approximation model, SAM model, where we call it's a framework for instructional design developed in response to the more agile approach. So, like these days, a lot of agile in the software development cycle, right? There was this waterfall methodology earlier, step after step, but now everything has moved to agile sprint mode, where the people are talking about shorter cycles, minimum viable product, shorter cycles, and so now the development also has become into shorter, where we actually create a prototype, review, design, and then publish it. Instead of waiting for the entire phase to happen, we are moving into shorter cycles. That is called the SAM model, and this actually helps um, to actually see whether we are early in the stage, whether we are going in the right direction or not. So you can read more about SAM model. So very quickly, I want to talk about the evaluation also. So at this stage, right, where now till now we have talked about the adult learning principles, we talked about the evolution of learning, the learning theories, we talked about learner styles, we talked about the history of instructional design, we also talked about various models, a few models, not everything, and we talked about it. And finally, we say, how do we evaluate? So Kirkpatrick is another educational psychologist. He said, like there are these four levels of evaluation. First is reaction. How did the learners enjoy the training? So in the reaction stage, once the training happens or once the learning happens, did the learners or whoever has gone through, did they enjoy the learning? Did they enjoy the training? Level one. If it's yes, then go to the level two, saying, did the learning transfer occur? Actually, did they, as enjoyment is good, people have participated, they said, they nodded their head and said really good, the trainer was really good, the material is really good, all these things are good, we got good response. But did learning happen is the question. So that's level two, whether the learning happened or not. Then third level is about impact. Now the learning has happened, people have learned it. What did the training change any behavior? Was there any impact or not? Check that. And finally, that the training influenced the performance, the results. So these four levels should be there in every evaluation. So there are two types: formative evaluation while going through the course, while going through this formative evaluation, summative evaluation at the end of the course. For example, if you are creating a module, after a session is done, maybe you have introduced the concept and then you have given a use case, you have given a demo, and after the demo is done, you actually give a small interactive questionnaire or a survey saying that whether they have so this at the reaction stage, they will know whether they have enjoyed the learning, or you will also know whether the learning actually happened, and all these things. Towards the end, summative, towards the end of it, you can have a lengthy questionnaire which talks about your results and impact, but the results will show only after 2 weeks. Then conduct a survey again and say whether the training was effective or not, whether the module is effective or not, what are the results, how is the performance changing. So look at evaluation at that level. And from Kirkpatrick's point of view, there are four levels. Incorporate all the levels into your evaluation when you are actually evaluating your course. So this is about it. So, and very quickly moving on to the modes of learning. So we have virtual instructor-led training and we have on-demand learning. So now these days, with the COVID coming in, a lot of instructor-led trainings. Earlier, people used to go and stand in a scenario, and there were training rooms in every org. Now this has changed, and now everything has become VLIT. People are doing a lot of virtual-led instructor trainings, and now a lot of on-demand learning also is there, where people want to, like just in time, they want to learn that particular point and get into their work. All these trainings are for a person to improve their performance and go to the next step. So, as instructional designers, curriculum developers, as learners, we need to have this background, this psychology the people who have actually contributed and said this is the way you have to develop. So you have to understand this, do some research on your own, learn a bit more, and then you will be successful in your career. So finally, going ahead, there are many things coming up. There is a AI wave. Lot of AI tools have come in. AI is taking up. So if you get into Chat GPT, you give any prompt, and then based on that prompt, it gives you a lot of content. Not only Chat GPT, there's into visual design, into designing, into writing, everything. There is a recent startup company which has come up. If you give them the context, it will give you a storyboard. And there's another AI tool. If you give them the storyboard, the AI tool will create a module and send it across. So there are a lot of AI waves coming in. We need to surf the AI wave in the domain, and the module should be more interactive and need based. A lot of gamification has been added, and as the technology evolves, many more newer apps are coming into the scene. So it is a constant learning for all of us. So, towards the end, I would like to thank all of you for giving this opportunity for me to share information. And one thing I would like to suggest is LXD has these courses, right? Basic courses, fundamental courses on instructional design, and they also have a practitioner's approach to instructional design. I would encourage all of you to enroll in that courses in LXD and learn more. This is just a spark, but you can actually get more from LXD. Thank you, Sandeep.
Thank you, Harry. And just before, we say a grand thank you. Just a question from Vishesh.
Yeah,
I think this is on the evaluation method, right? So,
yeah,
where he's asking, so level four is more to do
mm,
on ROI. The
yeah,
Yes, so it's more on the ROI. Is it
yeah.
right?
Yeah, it's more on return on investment. That's true. Because like whether you have invested so much in your training, you have spent a lot of time, your person hours has been spent, and you have come up with certain areas where like you spent a lot of information there, and then a lot of things you used, a lot of methodologies to create a module or do the training setup. But towards the end of it, if the learning doesn't happen, and there is something wrong in the whole process, right? So this all talks
Yes.
about the performance change, the behavior change. So a person who did not know this earlier now has known through your module, and his performance or her performance has changed, and they are performing better. That in turn leads to better return on investment, and it is actually impacting the company, impacting the way
Yes.
they are working. So that impact is the measure.
That's right.
Yeah,
And definitely, thank you for clearing that
yeah,
question, Harry. And I think so. In any business, if you first go, okay, hey, there's a good idea, or this is something which we can take an approach. The first conversation is, what is the ROI, right?
yeah,
And I think this really supports, right? So it is not just a methodology, but it is really practical, which can get a buy-in from the leadership. Yes.
true. Yeah,
So thank you very much,
yeah.
Harry. And it was really a very informational session. And thank you everyone for joining us today for this enriching session on educational psychology and instructional design by Harry Francis, as
Yeah.
part of the Learning Experience Design Guild web series. So this is a monthly web series which we connect with and bring experts so that they can share their expertise. And please take a moment to follow the LXD Guild community of practice on our social media platforms to stay updated with what are our upcoming events. And yeah, we